Considering recently that the Undertaker has from the WWE has recently taken his rightful place into the WWE Hall of Fame, there's been a lot of ups and downs in his career, especially when it comes to his WrestleMania opponents. But I want to talk about one that really hasn't gotten all the respect I think that he deserves. And of course, who am I talking about? I'm talking about the Giant Gonzalez, the late Giant Gonzalez. Real name Jorge Gonzalez, born in Argentina back in the 60s. He's a former Argentinian national basketball player. And after that, he went on to become El Gigante in WCW until he was picked up by the WWE for about a year. I want to talk about Giant Gonzalez for a minute because I felt that in many ways he was not as respected as I think that he should have been. Was he a good wrestler? No. Was he a great wrestler? Absolutely not. Was he an attraction? Yes, he was. To me, when I look at the Giant Gonzalez and I see the history of him, especially in the timing that he was brought into the company, it made me think. It made me think that this should be all about the story. And really, this whole thing with the Giant Gonzalez and the Undertaker was about the story. Undertaker and Paul Bearer, his late manager, both have openly agreed that here's what got me. Here's what I don't really know what the opinion is that they both had of the Giant Gonzalez. I know they were never a fan of his work or lack thereof. There's a famous story that the Undertaker actually told. Excuse me. There's a famous story about how the Undertaker actually told is when Yokozuna first came in late 1992. He saw him in a dark match, and he looked at Vince McMahon, who was behind him, and he begged him to please let him be the one to work with Yoko first because his work was just unbelievable. And Vince gave him his trademark laugh and said, "Oh, you're going to work with him all right, pal. But I got something else for you." And right down the hallway, kid you not, here came Giant Gonzalez. He said, "That's who I got for you first." And Undertaker was like, "Oh, no," because apparently Giant Gonzalez was one of the reasons why he left WCW. I know they did. I know both him and Paul Bearer didn't like the angle that they did with Giant Gonzalez. Whether or not they thought of him as a good person or not, they never flat out said, either one of them have never flat out said that they disliked Giant Gonzalez as a person. Apparently, according to a lot of people, including Harvey Whippleman and who was the other one? Bill Alfonso, who was his handler on the road, said that Giant Gonzalez was just a great guy. Giant Gonzalez, unlike other giants in the past, like in the future, like the Big Show, Great Khali, even Andre the Giant, Giant Gonzalez was actually bigger than all of them. He was built as 8 feet tall, but he had to be 7'7", well over 400, well into 400 pounds, and he could definitely have passed for 8 feet tall because, because of how easily it was for him to literally just go over the top rope. To me, this was all about the story for me personally, because when Undertaker was a heel, when he first got into the WWE, he was built as this unkillable, unstoppable monster. He was dead. Nobody could beat him. He even beat Hulk Hogan in 1991, which was unbelievable, for the WWE title. And then afterwards, when he became a face, he started taking on some of the big monster heels. He took on, before he became a heel, he took on the Ultimate Warrior, had a run with the Ultimate Warrior. And then when he turned face, he took on some of the greatest minds in the history of the business and some of the biggest monsters, such as Jake the Snake Roberts, as Sid Justice, or Psycho Sid, or Sid Vicious, whatever you want him to call him. And then there was also, he managed, but there was one thing that always happened. They never ever could stop him. They never ever could stop The Undertaker. Then finally, after a while, Harvey Whippleman tried to bring in his crew. And the guy that he tried to bring in to stop The Undertaker once and for all was none other than the mighty Kamala, the Ugandan giant, who in 1992 had a great run with The Undertaker in SummerSlam, couldn't beat him, and then they had a casket match. After that, Kamala left. And then Harvey Whippleman needed somebody to take out The Undertaker. And in Royal Rumble 1993, when The Undertaker was alone in the ring, next thing you know, out of nowhere, who was somebody who was not in the Rumble, came this unbelievable monster that just towered over The Undertaker, and The Undertaker was 6'10", and it was the Giant Gonzalez. Giant Gonzalez grabbed him, had a hold of him, literally just ragdoll him, and ragdoll him, and just went him back and forth all over the ring, and just totally destroyed him, just totally beat the ever living hell out of him. And, everybody, including me as a child, was probably thinking, man, this could be the guy that finally stops The Undertaker, because he's so big, he's so massive, he's so monstrous, and he just threw The Undertaker around like he was nobody. Then came to WrestleMania 9, when they had their match at WrestleMania 9 in Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. They had the match, and of course the match wasn't anything good. It wasn't your technical match, but to me it wasn't about that. To me, this kind of match, because you had two big guys the way they did, and because who The Undertaker was at the time, this was all about the story. Can The Undertaker beat Giant Gonzalez? Can he get him off his feet? And sure enough, out of nowhere, constantly, finally The Undertaker manages to get Giant Gonzalez down, but the Giant Gonzalez manages to come back and, literally choke him out unconscious. So to me, this whole thing was about the story of it. And I really honestly don't think that the Giant Gonzalez got the respect that he deserved. He didn't make millions out of this business, which is a shame, because he ended up leaving professional wrestling very early in life, in his late 20s, early 30s, and had to move back to Argentina, to his home village, where he remained the rest of his days very, very poor. Because of his size, he was very diabetic, and he found it very hard to get around. I mean, most giants do, especially with their limbs and everything. So he died very very early in life, in his early 50s. But to me, I think the Giant Gonzalez deserves more respect than he actually got, for the fact that he was in many ways a great storyteller. He had Harvey Whippleman doing all the talking for him. He did all the monster stuff, and he actually put The Undertaker, for the first time in his life, on the back burner, on his heel. So, these are the kind of things that we need to think about. Obviously, Giant Gonzalez, to me, I found Giant Gonzalez more entertaining than the Great Khali, because Giant Gonzalez, at least in some ways, could pretty much move. The Great Khali couldn't move to save his life. So this is what I feel. And, we must always remember and show our love and support, especially to wrestlers that are long gone. So to me, there's nothing but love in my heart for Giant Gonzalez, and I only hope that he ends up getting the respect that he deserves in one way or another. I'm Travis Walsh, and that's the way it is.